The moment the steel door slammed behind him, Elias Navarro realized something no pamphlet had warned him about. Pelican Bay didn't rehabilitate men, it buried them. He'd been in rough prisons before, but nothing matched the sterile, suffocating silence of the security housing unit. The step-down program was supposed to be his bridge out of it. A path back to general population. A chance to earn sunlight instead of living by the glow of a fluorescent bulb. If stories like this fascinate you, hit subscribe, because this one only gets darker. Orientation started in a windowless room stacked with dusty binders and crooked rehabilitation posters. A civilian facilitator read rules that sounded less like guidelines and more like traps: no hand signs, no coded conversations, no behavior that could be interpreted as manipulation. The word interpreted did all the heavy lifting. 2 guards watched from the doorway. Their posture said they didn't trust the program any more than the inmates did. Elias sat beside a man everyone called Ruiz, a survivor of 14 years in the SHU. His eyes were sunken, his voice dry. "These classes won't fix anything," Ruiz murmured. "They're just rearranging the problems." Elias didn't answer. In here, silence was safer than honesty. The facilitator launched into a shaky lecture on conflict avoidance. The inmates listened without expression. Every man in the room had learned to read danger long before the state tried to teach them about it. And right now, danger was closer than anyone wanted to admit. A deep metallic thud echoed down the hallway. The kind that wasn't accidental. The guards stiffened. One hand hovered near a taser, the other guard stepped out to check. Seconds later came another thud, sharper, closer. Then hurried voices. The facilitator froze. Ruiz's breathing slowed. A tension rolled through the room, silent but electric. The guards stepped outside and locked the door behind them. Elias knew that move. Locking inmates inside meant something unstable was happening outside. Another muffled shout hit the hallway. Not panicked, commanding. Then the lights flickered, humming like they were straining against whatever was unfolding. Ruiz leaned forward slightly, eyes never leaving the door. "That's not a fight," he whispered. "That's a shutdown." Rumors about the step-down program had circulated for months. Some said administration used it to shuffle high-risk inmates around without drawing attention. Others believed it forced rival groups into shared spaces so the institution could claim the SHU was still necessary. No one knew which version was true, but everyone knew Pelican Bay didn't change easily. Then, everything went still. No voices. No thuds. Just the buzzing lights and the collective heartbeat of men who'd survived too much to misread tension. The door swung open again. 2 guards stepped inside with stiff, practiced neutrality. One of them locked eyes with Elias. "Navarro. You're being moved." The inmates went quiet. Moves didn't happen in the middle of a session, not without a reason. Elias stood slowly. "Why?" The guard didn't blink. "Just follow instructions." Ruiz didn't look up, but his jaw clenched. In Pelican Bay, unexplained transfers weren't random. They were warnings, diversions, or cover for something the prison didn't want documented. As Elias stepped toward the door, he felt every gaze in the room tracking him. Not out of curiosity, but out of recognition. They'd seen this pattern before. A man gets pulled. Information disappears. Files shift. And the system keeps its secrets intact. The guard tightened his grip on Elias's arm. "Let's go." Elias crossed the threshold, realizing he wasn't walking into a new phase of the step-down program, he was walking into whatever the prison was trying to hide. The hallway felt colder than the classroom, as if whatever had happened minutes earlier was still hanging in the air. The guard walked Elias past a row of thick doors, each one holding men who'd spent years learning how to survive silence. None of them made a sound as he passed. That was its own warning. They stopped at an interview room, small, bright, too clean for Pelican Bay. The kind of room used when someone wanted answers without leaving a record. The guard opened the door, nodded for Elias to step inside, then closed it behind him. A lieutenant sat at the metal table. His uniform was crisp, his expression unreadable. "Sit," he said. Elias sat. The lieutenant folded his hands. "You were placed in the step-down program 5 weeks ago. 0 disciplinary issues. Good participation. You're on track. So let me ask you something simple. Has anyone approached you? Pressured you? Tried to influence you?" Elias kept his face steady. "No." The lieutenant studied him like he was checking for cracks. "We've had disruptions in the program. Some inmates aren't adjusting well. Others claim the classes are being used for communication between groups." Elias knew exactly what he was hinting at. The program wasn't just about behavior, it was about intelligence. Find out who talked to who nodded to who blinked at the wrong moment. The lieutenant leaned forward. "If you see something concerning, report it." Elias didn't respond. In Pelican Bay, reporting wasn't protection, it was a death sentence. After a long silence, the lieutenant dismissed him, and a guard led him back through the maze of corridors. But instead of returning to the classroom, they redirected him to a concrete yard divided into narrow, fenced-off cages. A few inmates were already inside their pens, pacing or staring at the sky like it owed them something. The guard unlatched a gate. Inside, Elias stepped into the narrow cage. The metal grated under his boots. The yard smelled of cold air and rust. Across from him, Ruiz was in another cage, hands tucked into his sleeves, eyes suspicious. "What did they want?" Ruiz called softly. Elias shook his head. "Questions." Ruiz smirked bitterly. "They're fishing." He wasn't wrong. The step-down program was built on the idea that inmates could change. But the administration treated every participant like a potential informant or a potential threat. The pressure wasn't to succeed, it was to slip. A whistle blew. Yard time ended. Guards escorted inmates back toward the unit. As Elias walked, he felt eyes on him, older inmates sizing him up, new inmates trying to understand why he'd been pulled out mid-session. Suspicion spread faster than truth in Pelican Bay. Back inside, they passed a classroom where another step-down group was meeting. The facilitator looked exhausted, flipping through papers while inmates sat rigid. A poster on the wall read, "Reform begins with trust." No one in the room believed that. The guard escorting Elias paused suddenly. He tilted his head toward a nearby corridor, one normally restricted. "Navarro," he muttered under his breath. "Keep your head low. Something's shifting." Elias didn't get the chance to ask what he meant. Another officer approached, motioned for the escort to move, and the warning evaporated into routine noise. Back in his cell, Elias replayed everything: the thuds, the locked door, the lieutenant's questions, the warning in the hallway. None of it fit the program's promise of stability. Pelican Bay prided itself on control, but something inside that system was fraying. As night settled over the SHU, shouts echoed from somewhere deep in the unit. Not violent, angry. Protesting. Arguing with staff. Then came a sound Elias hadn't heard in months, the alarm buzzer. It blared once. Then again. Ruiz's voice carried faintly through the vent. "Told you. Something's breaking." Elias lay on his bunk, staring at the concrete ceiling, realizing the step-down program wasn't failing by accident. Someone was pushing it to fail. The alarm died down before sunrise, but the tension it left behind stayed trapped in the walls. Walking through Pelican Bay that morning felt like stepping into a place holding its breath. Guards spoke in tight, guarded tones. Inmates moved slower, watching everything, sensing a shift no one wanted to name. Elias was taken from his cell without warning. No cuffs, no explanation, just a silent escort through the SHU. They led him into a small investigation room with a blinking red camera and a recorder that remained pointedly turned off. The same lieutenant from the day before entered, though this time his calm felt thinner. "We had an incident last night," he said. A step-down participant became non-compliant. Elias kept neutral. In Pelican Bay, a word like that didn't describe truth, it disguised it. "He claims certain staff are interfering with the program," the lieutenant continued. "Pushing inmates to fail. Manipulating evaluations." Elias didn't flinch. "And you think I'm part of that?" "No. But you may know who is." It was a careful trap, designed to look like concern while fishing for names. Elias stayed steady. "I don't know anything." The lieutenant studied him, somewhere between irritated and impressed. "If this program collapses, the SHU fills back up. Some people want that outcome. Think about who benefits." Elias didn't need to think. He already knew. Some officers preferred the old model, cleaner lines of authority, fewer complications, fewer eyes watching their decisions. Some inmates preferred it too. Isolation kept power structures frozen. "You can go," the lieutenant finally said. But instead of returning him to his unit, a new escort appeared, Officer Mercer, known for playing both sides depending on the day. He walked Elias through a restricted hallway rarely used for routine movement. "You want the truth?" Mercer muttered. "The step-down program isn't failing on its own. Someone's killing it." Elias's pulse tightened. "Why tell me?" Mercer's eyes flicked toward a camera. "Because it's gone too far." He stopped at a supply closet and cracked the door open. Inside, shredded documents lay piled on the floor, behavior notes, class logs, progress evaluations. All the paperwork the program depended on. "Someone did this after hours," Mercer whispered. "They targeted every file tied to advancement." Elias stared at the shredded pages. Someone wasn't trying to sabotage inmates, they were sabotaging the entire program. Mercer shut the door. "If inmates think the program is pointless, they stop trying. Then administration says it's ineffective and pulls the plug. And we go right back to the old system." Elias understood. "So this benefits staff." Mirror didn't confirm, but he didn't deny it either. Some officers prefer predictable cages over unpredictable men. Before Elias could respond, 2 guards rounded the corner. Mercer snapped back into formal posture. "Move." They escorted Elias to a different unit, a transitional block usually reserved for inmates labeled at risk. Isolated, but not like the SHU. Watched, but not protected. A place to keep someone out of the way. As he walked past, Ruiz called from a distant cell, "What happened?" Elias didn't answer. His silence told Ruiz everything. Back in the new cell, Elias sat on the bunk and let the weight of the truth settle in. The alarms, the locked doors, the sudden moves, they weren't random moments in a failing system. They were deliberate steps in a controlled collapse. The step-down program wasn't falling apart. It was being drowned slowly, quietly, from the inside. Someone wanted the SHU full again. Someone wanted isolation restored to its old power. And Elias had been moved not because he did something wrong, but because he had seen too much. As lights out echoed through the unit, Elias realized something else. In Pelican Bay, the most dangerous place to stand wasn't with the gangs or the guards. It was between them. If you think this story was intense, the next one will leave you speechless. Subscribe for more true crime stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat.